So, when I did this video last year, it kind of blew up. By that I mean 7,000 views, but hey. And since I keep getting views for these videos, I'm gonna keep making them. It's 2024, and this year of softball has been very interesting to say the least. Doesn't help that social media loves to push certain narratives, but we've got a bracket to break down. So let's go. Texas A&M has had a good season. They took a majority of the series they played in the SEC, though they did also get swept by LSU and Florida. And they also took losses to Bama, Kentucky, Texas State, and Kansas. They're still a great team with a 40-13 record, a team batting average of .304, ERA of 2.59. Emily Kennedy, their best pitcher, has an ERA of 1.68. However, remember I said they have a loss to Texas State. Oh hello Bobcats. A batting average of .294, but an ERA of 1.82, 10th best in the nation. Led by Jessica Mullins, who has an ERA of 1.31. This Texas State team is going to be a problem. They've given Texas fits twice, and there's an argument that in their first meeting, Texas's bats got bailed out by Tegan Kavan having a heck of a game. That's of course assuming that Mullins' arm holds up. She's pitched 229 in the third innings. Of Texas State's nearly 396. That's 58%. Penn State hasn't been a bad team either, though their schedule hasn't exactly been the best. Albany's also been decent, but they have a major hole in the lower part of their batting order. But the top of their order is pretty good. Still think it's going to be between A&M and Texas State to win. Florida State is only the 15th seed. This may seem crazy to those who don't follow softball, but this Florida State team isn't nearly as good as it was in previous years. If you want evidence, look at their 14-10 loss to UCLA, or their 20-10 loss to Georgia. The Noles have been up and down all year, from run-ruling Florida to getting run-ruled by Syracuse, from a win over Stanford to a loss to Florida Gulf Coast. The Noles bat .339, led by Jasoni Beecham, who's batting .439 with 15 homers. However, their team ERA is 3.67. That loss of Catherine Sandercock hurt badly, and Ashton Danley hasn't exactly filled her shoes. Yet. Florida State will also deal with Auburn and UCF in this regional as well. Auburn's batting average is lower at .249, but their ERA is 2.47, and they're led on the mound by Maddie Penta with a 1.77 ERA. Auburn's also got series wins over Bama and LSU, as well as a win over Tennessee. UCF's .306 batting average is led by Janisha Rose, .372, and Jada Cody's .348. And they don't have bad arms either with a 3.16 ERA. UCF doesn't exactly have the quality wins, but they have a habit of playing to their competition, giving Texas, Oak State, and Oklahoma scares, but also losing to Iowa State. Chattanooga shouldn't be much of an issue, but you never know. Remember when Alabama was the 5 seed last year and I complained? Turns out I didn't give Jayla Torrance enough credit, as she put the tide on her back for the regionals and gave Montana Fouts enough time to come back for the Supers before they met their end in OKC. To be fair, Tennessee and Stanford were great teams. This year though, they don't have Fouts. They do have Kayla Beaver though. She's got a 1.78 ERA. However, Patrick Murphy is doing Patrick Murphy things and overpitching Beaver as she's thrown 161.1 innings. We've seen this before. The Tide started off 19-1, but once they got to SEC play, they went 10-14 in their conference. In fact, Bama only won a single series in the SEC. I know the conference is good at softball, but I don't think they're that good that Bama deserves the 14th seed. It's not like they play an extremely tough non-conference either, though the FSU win is good. Bama's batting average is only .251. However, Bama's bats will likely be having fits against the Clemson Tigers. They may not be as impressive as they were last year, but Clemson is still a team to fear with their pitching and batting in combination. A team ERA of 2.22, and their batting average is .298, led by Valerie Cagel's .365. It should be noted that Clemson has had some bad losses though. SELU hasn't looked overly impressive, and neither has USC Upstate, but you never know. The Raging Cajuns of Louisiana may have pulled off the most notable upset in college softball history. They ended the Oklahoma Sooners' 71-game winning streak. This Louisiana team has been good the entire year, however, and not just for one game on Love's Field. In fact, since that win over the Sooners, the Cajuns have only dropped 5 games, and that's with playing a very tough non-conference schedule. Texas twice, Oklahoma twice, Stanford twice, and Baylor thrice. A batting average of .317, led by Mejia Davis's .416, and an ERA of 2.66, led by Sam Landry's 2.08. Louisiana did get a tough draw, however. They have to play Baylor in their regional, but Baylor's been inconsistent. My evidence? Baylor has a win over Oklahoma State, but they got swept by Kansas and have a loss to UT Arlington. That sounds familiar. Baylor's ERA has skyrocketed recently as it's up to 3.53, but their ace Dariana Orm has been playing all season due to injury, but Riley Crandall and Leah Binford have been carrying the weight there. In terms of batting, Shaylon Govan and her .44 average lead Baylor's 2.288. Yeah, Baylor's bats aren't the best. Ole Miss barely stuck into the tournament as they were the last team in. I'd have picked BYU over them personally. Princeton doesn't exactly have any wins against tournament teams, but you never know. I have Louisiana winning this regional though. Arkansas got the 12th seed, and honestly, they're not a bad team at all. Nothing really stood out on their record, and they've got the 4th seed in the SEC. Their bats are led in average by Reagan Johnson with a .365, and Bree Ellis has plenty of power with her 14 homers. Arkansas's pitching has vastly improved compared to previous years, with a 2.12 ERA and Robin Herron's 1.68 and Morgan Landstock's 1.86. They lead this team in the circle. However, Arizona's a threat in this regional as they've had a great season in the Pac-12. Speaking of which, it's the last year of the Pac-12, because conference realignments. Arizona's bats are on fire with a .330 average, 12th in the nation, led by Reagan Shockey's .413. And this team having 4 double-digit home run hitters. Lots of power. Arizona needs those bats though, as their team ERA is 3.74, 154th in the nation. Villanova's had a good year, but they haven't gotten any good wins. Southeastern Missouri, or SEMO as I like to call them, has a win over Missouri, but nothing much. I think this region comes down to Arizona and Arkansas. Georgia being the 11th seed isn't terrible, but considering who's 1 seed above them, yeah, there's a pretty big difference. They went undefeated in Clearwater, but then got beat by Virginia Tech. However, the Bulldogs have had a good season despite dropping more SEC games than they probably should have. Regardless, you can't deny their talent. UGA's .295 average doesn't really reflect their actual ability, as 6 of their batters are over 300. But Jada Kearney and Sarah Mosley are both home run hitters. Georgia's ERA isn't bad at all at 2.63, but they don't have the best arms. Lily Bax has a 2.50 and Shelby Waters has a 3.11. Charlotte is a tricky opponent, however, and Liberty can give teams issues. Charlotte bats .271, but watch out for Ariana Roddy, who has a .362 average and 21 home runs. Charlotte's ERA is 2.75, and both their starters are slightly above a 2. Charlotte also has that win over Florida State as well. Liberty has a 2.61 average, but keep your eye on Rachel Rope, who bats .368 and 17 homers. They lost Carly Keeney to the transfer portal, and their pitching has suffered slightly. They're up to a 3.2 ERA. But Elena Escobar and Kaylin Yoder are .264 and .275 ERAs respectively. Liberty also has wins over Charlotte, LSU, and Louisiana. UNCW isn't that impressive on paper, however. Now on to the segment I'm most upset about. Selection Committee. Why is Duke the 10th seed? They went 47-6, including 20-4 in the ACC, and they're the 10th seed? If this doesn't scream SEC bias, I don't know what does. Give me an explanation, because this Duke team is stacked with talent. Starting with Duke's bats, they swing a .329 average, which is 13th in the nation. And watch out for Claire Davidson and her .428 average and 17 homers. But Duke's biggest weapon is likely their pitching, a 1.54 ERA, the 3rd best in the nation, led by Jayla Wright with a 1.2. Cassidy Curd has a 1.43. Lily Walker has a 1.54 in her relief duty. Duke swept Clemson and Virginia Tech. Their only series that they dropped was Virginia. Duke didn't get the toughest regional draw, however. Utah's gotten better as the season has gone on, but Jesus, look at some of their old results. A 3-20 loss to Oregon? They did take the series over Washington, though. Utah's batting numbers are inconsistent, and only 7 of their batters have over 100 at-bats. But I don't know if that's injuries or not. Their average is .307, but Abby Dayton and Haley Denning are both plus 400. Utah's pitching isn't the best, and their numbers are down from last year, if that makes sense. Mariah Lopez is throwing a 2.29 ERA, but Aspen Ladd is a 3.53, and their team as a whole has 3.04. And that's with Lopez throwing over 200 innings. Speaking of pitching, South Carolina added a grade 1 in the offseason in Elena Vaughter. Vaughter leads his team in innings pitched and has a 2.03 ERA, but the Gamecocks as a whole pitched a 2.07. Their bats aren't that good though, as they bat a .247, which is way lower than you'd like. South Carolina isn't the best team here, however, as they got 11th in the SEC. Morgan State, please make your results page easier to read, and I'll congratulate you on winning the Mid-Eastern Atlantic Conference, I think is what that is. Duke's likely winning this regional, but the selection committee did give them one blessing in the terrible seeding. They avoid Stanford, but they'll also face Oklahoma if they win their super and it all goes to chalk. Compare what LSU did compared to Duke, and you'll see why it makes no sense that Duke got ranked below LSU in the seeding. But I can go on and on and on, so let's talk about LSU instead. They went 12-12 in SEC play, but at one point they were the number 2 team in the nation. And then they dropped the series to Ole Miss. They're still a very good team though. Their bats hit .290, led by Raylan Gutierrez's .333. Their pitching is at .228, led by Sidney Berzon's .164, which includes a 14-inning, 2-run marathon against Bama, including 13 scoreless innings. LSU also didn't get the toughest regional draw, as Cal's the next best team in here. Cal does have some nice wins, including a win over UGA. Cal's .306 batting average is pretty good, led by Tatum and Zaldo's .408. And keep an eye on Elon Butler's 16 homers. But their pitching isn't the best at .310, led by Haley Arch's .286. Jackson State and Southern Illinois both fall into the category of conference champions. SIU's best win is Texas State's, and Jacksonville State's is Florida A&M. Yeah, not the deepest regional here. LSU shouldn't have a tough time, but they do have another problem to deal with if they get to the Supers. The Stanford Cardinal got the 8th seed, and they made some noise after the scares they gave the Sooners last year. When you look at Stanford's results, you'll see some scores that seem to jump around between common opponents. Allow me to tell you why. Nigeri Kennedy. Kennedy's .5 ERA is the best in the nation, and she's a problem for any staff. But it's worth noting Stanford's ERA as a team is 1.64. Sorry Reagan Krause, but you're not Nija. Still, a 1.64 ERA is 6th best in the nation. Stanford's issue does seem to be the bats once again though. It's up from last year and Emily Jones bats .366, but I'm not exactly interested in relying on homers. Even if Ali Kanashiro's got 10 and Taryn Kern's got 7. The team average of .278 isn't the best. Stanford's regional is a lot more balanced than others, but it's worth noting it's still not the deepest. The Mississippi State Bulldogs do have some wins over Louisiana, but they aren't the best team based on what they did in the SEC, getting the 6th seed and then falling to South Carolina. The Bulldogs' average of .306 is fairly good, and their bats are extremely balanced, but Madison Kennedy has 17 homers in her own right. The Bulldogs' .303 ERA doesn't help their case, but their relief pitchers seem to be bringing those numbers down, as Aspen Wesley's 3.28 ERA isn't exactly what you want from your pitcher number 1. St. Mary's and Stanford have both met, and that went the Cardinals' way. Also, here's Cal State Fullerton, who has a run rule win over Tennessee. What makes it crazier is that Carlin Pickens threw a perfect game for Tennessee the game before that run rule. CSFU's batting average is .314, and that's led by Megan Delgadillo's, sorry if I mispronounced that, .420. And their pitching has a .226 ERA, 24th best in the nation, led by Haley Rainey and her 1.76 ERA. Stanford's got a slight test, but if Nigel's cooking and the rest of their arms can do their job, Stanford's got a good path to OKC. The Tigers started off pretty good, but then they took some weird losses, including SEMO. Still, this is a very good Missouri team, though I don't think they're quite as scary as Stanford or Duke, but I also believe a majority of these SEC teams got heavily overrated. All 13 SEC teams made it into the tournament for the record. Missouri's bats are led by Jenna Laird and her 3.55 ERA, but the Tigers only bat 2.68. The Tigers used to be known for their power, but no one has double-digit homers this year. Their ERA is 2.07, but their main pitcher, Lauren Greens, only throws a 2.64. The Tigers, however, also got a very tough draw, as Washington and Indiana are both in this region. Washington had a great season to start, but began to struggle a bit in April. They're still a great team, though. They bat 322 and are led by Brooke Nelson's 3.45. Ruby Malin's not quite as pitching at the level she did last year, but her 2.35 ERA is still pretty good, and Washington's 2.71 isn't bad. Indiana also struggled early season, but navigated an extremely tough Big Ten tournament to clinch their spots. Indiana's bats swing 312 and are led by Allie Van Brandt and her 370 average. Their pitching isn't the best though at 3.02, led by Brianna Copeland's 2.81 ERA. Omaha's best win is probably Arizona State's. Personally, I think Missouri has a tough road out of their region, but they might be able to win if their bats come alive. If you had told anyone that UCLA would be the 6th seed about 3 weeks into the season, you likely would have been laughed out of the room. As of late though, the Bruins have been rolling, and they're looking more and more like UCLA. An 8-game winning streak that includes having swept Stanford shows how good this team truly is. This team's bats are highlighted by Maya Brady, who's batting a .403 and has 15 homers. As a whole, the Bruins hit .316. UCLA's ERA is a lot higher than you think it would be, but it's also heavily inflated at 3.68, and their numbers are down as they've gotten later into the year, led by Caitlin Terry and Taylor Tinsley. I still think someone in this regional may be playing a bit of a joke on the Bruins though, because take a look at who's in here. Grand Canyon, the team who beat UCLA last year. So is San Diego State, who won the Los Angeles Regional last year. The Aztecs are at a 2.85 average, led by Mac Barber at 3.83, and she also has 14 homers. The Aztecs' 2.51 ERA isn't bad either. All of their pitchers are sitting around the 2.5 ERA, led by Didi Hernandez. Allie Light shouldn't be underestimated either. Should also be noted that the Aztecs have a win over Missouri. Virginia Tech also has a win over Georgia and has a very good team. Emma Ritter is batting .430 and leads the .342 average, and powerful Hokie bats. Emma Lemley's 2.63 leads the ERA of 2.97. Should also be noted that Grand Canyon does have a win over Virginia Tech themselves. The Bruins should win this regional, but I also said that last year. I have no idea how Oklahoma State got seeded this highly, and let me explain why. Yes, I'm well aware they beat both Oklahoma and Texas, but they also have 2 losses to both BYU and Iowa State, as well as a loss to Tulsa. I get that I'm biased, but compare that to Duke and tell me who's better. Let's start with Oklahoma State's strong points. Their pitching. Lexi Kilfoyle's 1.13 ERA is a massive hurdle for anyone to clear, but she's backed up by Ivy Rosenberry. Kyra Aycock isn't the best number 3 though. The Cowgirls bat .307, led by Caroline Wayne's .372, and she and Carly Godwin have combined for 30 home runs this year. Kentucky also has 2 wins over Stanford, but they went 8-16 in the SEC. I don't get it either. The Cats are led at the plate by Riley Smith and her .371 average, leading the .279 that the Cats have. However, their pitching is a nightmare for them, with an average of 3.83 ERA. Stephanie Schoonover's 2.76 isn't bad, but you can't have her pitch every inning. Michigan's got some big wins, including Florida, but this team's results are all over the place and it's hard to figure them out. Maddie Erickson leads the Wolverines' .277 average with their own .357, but don't sleep on Kiki Thull's 15 homers. Their .270 ERA is led by Lauren Durkowski's 2.16. Pretty good. Sorry Northern Colorado, but I think you're a little bit outmatched here. Your best win is Nebraska. A Jordy Ball is Nebraska. The Cowgirls should win this regional, but they have a bad habit of playing down the competition. Also, I just want to take a moment to call out Kenny Gajewski. Here's what he said about Kelly Maxwell, Oklahoma State's best player since Samantha Show, transferring to OU. Guess what, Kenny? She's got more Big 12 titles than you do now. Florida has been a very good team for a long time, and this year is no exception. They went 46-12, finished second in the SEC, and won the conference tournament, with some great wins and their worst loss really being USF. However, this Florida team is a nightmare to deal with. Florida's bats have always been good at 3.42 this year, but Corobotus is hitting 4.67, but their pitching is another nightmare. Keegan Rothrock has a 2.48 ERA, which considering she plays in the SEC is pretty good, but that leads their team's 2.85 ERA. FAU has been a decent team out of the American, but they're not the best team as they don't have any wins that really stand out. South Alabama, however, has proven themselves to be a great team as they have 4 wins over SEC teams. Their bats aren't the best at 2.49, but Olivia Lackey's 1.42 ERA can make the Jaguars a pain to deal with for other batters. As a whole, they throw a 2.57 ERA. Florida Gulf Coast got a win over Florida State, but other than that, meh. South Alabama is the biggest threat for the Gators, but Florida should still be able to get this win easily. Still, you never know. The Lady Vols have been a very good team this year, but they're also in the same region as a team that I think will make a lot of noise. But let's talk the Lady Vols to start. Their team ERA is 1.48, second best in the nation behind Boston. Peyton Gottschall and Carlin Pickett are arguably the best pitcher duo in the nation, as both are sub 1.3. In terms of bats, they're just under 2.96, led by Keegan Malloy's 3.55, which is lower than she was hitting last year, but still, she's a threat. The Lady Vols also won all of their SEC series, but were shockingly eliminated in the first round of the SEC tournament by LSU. As good as the Lady Vols have been, though, allow me to introduce you to the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, the best power-hitting team in the nation. Carly Spade has 36 home runs. Jenna Golombowski has 28. 5 other Redhawks have double-digit homers. They've had 159 in total. But the Redhawks have a massive weakness. Their pitching is averaging a 4.63 ERA. The question is, can you outscore them? The Redhawks come in on a 12-game winning streak and only lost one conference game all year long. As I mentioned earlier, they have insane power, but they have struggled against better pitching, which both Gottschall and Pickens will provide. Virginia is also in this regional, and while they have 2 wins over Duke and 1 over Clemson, they're still not the best team out there. Dayton doesn't have any overly impressive wins, but this regional is almost bound to become a home run derby with all the names involved. Oklahoma got the 2 seed, and while I could complain, I won't. Texas and Oklahoma are basically interchangeable. For the first time since 2010, Oklahoma didn't win the Big 12 regular season title, but they won the conference championship, and they have 2 wins over Texas, a win over Duke, Washington, Louisiana, and Miami. Oklahoma's bats swing 3.67, and they're currently led by Kinsey Hansen's 4.21, one of 4 Sooners batting over 400, and their ERA is 1.84, led by Kelly Maxwell's 1.96 and Kirsten Deal's 1.62. Apparently, the selection committee appears to be sick of Oklahoma's domination because they've given the Sooners a tough draw with Boston. Boston bats 3.25 and is led by the 4.07 of Lauren Kelleher, and Boston also leads the nation in ERA with a 1.26, led by Casey Rickards 1.20. Boston also only has 4 losses, best record in the tournament, though because they play in the Patriot League, their schedule hasn't exactly been the best. They did sweep their conference though. Oregon is also here, and every Pac-12 team will at least be a threat. Oregon does have series wins over Washington and Arizona though. Sorry Cleveland State, but with the way Oklahoma has been playing recently, you'll need your A game to survive. The number 1 seed is the Texas Longhorns. As an OU fan, that pains me to say. Here's a clip of Kelly Maxwell striking out Reese Atwood to make me feel better. The Longhorns' .379 batting average leads the nation and is led by Atwood's .427. The Longhorns' pitching staff is also a nightmare with a 1.80 ERA, with 5 different pitchers who can strike you out. Tegan Cavan has thrown the most innings, but Tatali Gutierrez has arguably been their ace. The only series Texas dropped was to Oklahoma State. and they've been consistent all year aside from their one loss to Houston, who finished last in the Big 12. Siena may have won the MAC with 2 A's, but their record isn't that impressive. St. Francis pulled off a conference sweep, but has a 16-12 record against a non-conference schedule that really isn't that good. Grace Vesco is still a threat though. Northwestern is by far the biggest threat to Texas in this regional. Their 2.78 batting average isn't bad, and Kansas Robinson's 3.97 average is something to keep in mind. And they can hit homers. Their pitching, being a 2.26 ERA, isn't bad, and they're led by Ashley Miller's 1.33. Northwestern has only lost 3 games in the Big Ten, but Indiana knocked them out of their conference tournaments. Texas got a fairly easy draw, I'd argue, though. Now the Longhorn fans hope A&M wins their regional. Possible sneak peek of the SEC?